Hello everybody. This is the last video I'm gonna make. Um, so it's been a lot of work to make all these videos, but hopefully they've been helpful, useful, and you've enjoyed them. Today I'm going to be showing you dynamic solvers. I showed you Encloth in an earlier video to show you how to make a pillow and a blanket. This works on the same sort of principle, but it makes it so you can get simple animations quickly and without too much work. Alright, so with that being said, let's get started. I've set up a simple scene here, just a cube, some cylinders, a sphere, and a plane. Nothing fancy. So what I'm going to do first, so there's two kind of solvers. There's there's two kind of bodies when working with solvers. There's passive and active rigid bodies. Passive rigid bodies do not move if they're collided with, so they act like ground would. Active rigid bodies you can affect them with gravity and other objects interacting with them. So I want these two objects to be passive, and I want everything else to be active. So in your dynamics menu, in your soft rigid bodies, I'm going to say create passive rigid bodies with both selected. I am then going to select the other objects and say active rigid bodies. So if I make myself 500 frames to evaluate this and I play it, absolutely nothing happens. So you're like, well, that was a waste of time. Aha, but we need to add gravity in. So with everything selected, go to fields and click on gravity. So now if we play it, our ball bounces down our ramp and hits into our cylinders. As you can probably tell, it's not a very heavy ball and it doesn't knock down very many cylinders. So it's kind of half-hearted at it. So what we can do is we can select our ball, go to rigid body, and we can up the mass. So it's up to like 42. Play it again. It'll bounce down, it'll hit into our spheres, cylinders this time, and it's a much more aggressive interaction, maybe a little too aggressive. Pushes them around rather than knocking them over. So let's down that a little bit. Like so. So it knocks them over. We get a nice effect. And then they fall off the plane and they fall forever. So that's something you have to keep in mind with solvers. It'll keep evaluating for a long time until it restarts. So another thing to keep in mind, if you rewind to frame 1 with the rewind back to the beginning button and you play it, in theory it should evaluate the same every time. So when you render it out, it should look more or less exactly like that. Of course, there are differences because when it's in the preview window, like it is now, it is doing off integer-based collision calculations for speed. When it actually renders it out, it's in float, so it's more accurate, but you can get small changes. But something to keep in mind, if I evaluate it from frame 0 every time, it's actually going to have a slightly different effect. This is a bad example, but as you can see, they react a little differently. So if I rewind it, it should react very similar. Close, not quite. Frame 0. So just keep that in mind. If you are evaluating from frame 0, when you set up your batch render settings, make sure you start at frame 0 and evaluate from there. I think it's easier to evaluate from frame 1, so that's what I do. Anyway, so that is how solvers work, and then really quickly I'll show you how you set up batch rendering. So in your render settings up here, you'll want to change your format to JPEG. Don't try to export as a video. It gets to like 99% and then fails every time, so it's easier to do individual frames that you can then take into a program like Premiere or something and then put together. You want your compression at 100 because you want it best quality. I usually do name number dot extension. You want to give enough frame padding so you have enough zeros before it. So if I was doing from 999 frames to 100 frames, I would do 3. If I was doing more than 1,000 frames, I would do 4, etc., etc. If I was only doing up to 99 frames, I'd only do 2, just so it orders it correctly. You can set a custom prefix here if you so desire, in your start frame and end frame. If you were evaluating from frame 0 all the time and that's how you built your animation, then this needs to be 0. This obviously is the last frame you do it by. You can skip frames if you're doing a test render or something like that. Pick your camera carefully, which camera that it's going to render from. If you have it set up in your perspective camera and you have that keyframed or whatever, make sure it's perspective. If you have a separate camera set up, make sure that one's selected for that. There's your frame size that it will render out as. Alright, and then one last thing I will show you. Oh, and then if you're actual batch rendering it out, you go to the rendering menu, render, batch render. The dialog box doesn't really have anything in it that matters, so you just hit batch render. It'll then start the batch rendering process. It's a separate program from Maya, so you can still do stuff in Maya while it's batch rendering. Something to be aware of. And the last thing I'm going to show you is what's called Play Blast. So if you right click on your timeline and you go to Play Blast, I opened up the options here. I'm going to change my quality to 100 for kicks and my scale to 1, and then I'm going to hit Play Blast. It's then going to go through and it's going to evaluate my animation. And if you have 1,000 cylinders set up and you have 10 balls going and knocking them all down, your computer is going to have serious lag when it's evaluating it. This isn't going to be true time. There's going to be differentiations, and if you want to sync it up to music or something, or it has to be so many seconds long, you need to make sure that the timing is perfect at 24 frames a second, which is what Maya exports video at. So it'll run through all of your visible frames in your all of your visible frames in your window. So as you can see, I don't know why it's skewing this weird. Probably something to do with some of the settings I changed. But this is real live time. This is exactly, it's 20 seconds. It's exactly how long it'll be when you render it. So let's change this to 100 frames. Play that. See how far that gets us. Not far enough. 200. Play blast. Quality. Let's reset settings. Try that. So it made our window smaller, but hopefully this time it'll work a little better. It'll go through and evaluate our frames, like so. Yes, this works better. So it comes through, hits it. And the nice thing about this is it is exactly time to the second perfect to what the final render will look like. Obviously it's it's not full quality shaded wise because this is taking it from the viewport, but your timing of your animation is going to be spot on. So that's a useful tool for building out animations to preview them. So anyway, that's it, folks. I think I've covered most everything. I'm sure there's things I haven't covered, but I've tried to give you guys the tools to use your own creativity, your imagination to go and figure out what you're trying to do and accomplish it. I've been working in Maya for over 2 years, so if you're all impressed of how fast I am, it's because I've spent, thousands of hours in Maya already. If I went too fast, I'm sorry. I tried to go slow, but there's some things I take for granted because I've been doing it for so long. Anyway, I appreciate you all watching. If you watched all my videos from back to front, I'm very impressed. Congratulations. I have 2 one-hour videos in this series. That could get kind of boring if you're not following along actively. Anyway, well, thank you all. I'm Bronson White, signing off for the last time. Get out there, get in Maya, be creative, and have fun. So, go create stuff. Alright, signing off.